Mary Calder had buried her husband on the ridge behind the house, where the wind never stopped moving and the grass bent like it was praying. That was 7 years ago, and the town of Dry Creek had been waiting ever since for her to follow him either into the ground or back among people. She did neither, for Homestead sat alone a mile past the last fence line, a weather-beaten house crouched against the open land like it knew better than to stand tall. Folks said it was too isolated for a woman alone. They said the land was cursed, the well unreliable, the winters unforgiving. What they meant was simpler. Mary Calder did not belong to them anymore, and that made them uneasy. Every few months, someone rode out with a suggestion, dressed up as concern: sell the land, come stay in town. Move in with relatives she hadn't spoken to in years. Mary listened politely, offered coffee if they'd accept it, and said no every time. She said no, because this land had been her husband's dream, and later, her grief's only witness. She said no because the quiet gave her room to breathe. And she said no because stubbornness, once rooted, is harder to pull than mesquite. On this particular afternoon, Mary was repairing the chicken coop when she noticed the dust trail. A horse moving wrong, too slow, uneven. She straightened, hand shading her eyes, heart ticking faster than she cared to admit. Visitors rarely came unannounced. The horse reached the fence line and stopped. The rider stayed upright for a moment longer, then slid sideways and hit the ground with a dull thud. Mary didn't hesitate. She dropped her tools and ran. The man was bleeding. That much was clear. Blood darkened his shirt near the ribs, and his face was drawn tight with pain. His badge caught the light as she knelt beside him. Lawman. A U.S. Marshal, if the star shape was to be trusted. Sir, she said firmly, pressing her hand against his shoulder. Can you hear me? His eyes opened, sharp even through the haze. Didn't mean to fall here, he muttered. Horse had other ideas. She almost smiled, despite herself. You're hurt. Seen worse, he said, then promptly fainted. Mary sighed. Of course you have. She managed to drag him no small feat into a borrowed sled and haul him inside. The house smelled of soap, wood smoke, and dried herbs. She laid him on the kitchen table, cutting away bloodied fabric with practiced hands. The wound was a gunshot, shallow but ugly. He'd lost blood, and more than that, time. As she cleaned and stitched, she noticed the lines on his face. Not old, but worn. A man shaped by long roads and hard choices. Elias Grant, his papers said. He'd been chasing someone, judging by the wanted notice folded in his coat pocket. By nightfall, the storm rolled in. Rain battered the roof, thunder rattled the windows, and Mary lit every lamp she owned. She fed the fire, checked his fever, and waited. When Elias finally woke, the first thing he did was reach for a gun that wasn't there. Easy, Mary said calmly. You're safe. For now. He studied her. Then the room. This Dry Creek. Near enough. I shouldn't be here, he said. Mary met his gaze, steady as stone. Neither should most things that keep breathing. Outside, the wind howled across the ridge, and the widow who wouldn't leave realized her solitude had just ended, whether she liked it or not. Elias Grant drifted in and out of consciousness as the storm passed. Mary kept watch from a straight-backed chair beside the bed she had set up near the hearth. The fire crackled low, steady, just enough to keep the chill from settling too deep into his bones. She had learned long ago that comfort was something you rationed carefully. When Elias woke again, the pain came first. A sharp pull in his side reminded him where he was. He turned his head slowly and took in the room, the rough-hewn walls, the neatly stacked firewood, the iron kettle simmering on the stove. This was not a jail cell or a boarding house. This was a home. Mary noticed his eyes, open and crossed the room. Don't move, she said, firm but not unkind. I wasn't planning on it, he replied hoarsely. Feels like someone already moved me enough. She checked the bandage at his ribs. Her fingers practiced and steady. Bullet went clean through. You're lucky. Elias let out a breath. Luck's never followed me this far west. She handed him a cup of water. Drink slow. He did, studying her over the rim. You didn't have to take me in. Mary set the cup aside. You were bleeding in my yard. I'm not the kind of woman who steps over a dying man. Town won't see it that way. They rarely do. That was all she said on the matter, and Elias sensed there was no pushing past it. Silence settled between them, not awkward, just heavy, like something waiting to be named. Over the next 2 days, Mary tended him with quiet efficiency. She spoke only when necessary, yet Elias learned more from what she didn't say. This was a woman who had learned to survive without asking permission. Her movements were careful but not hesitant, her gaze direct but guarded. On the second evening, hoofbeats echoed faintly from the ridge. Mary stiffened. Elias noticed at once. Someone looking for me. Someone always is, she replied, reaching for her rifle and resting it by the door. The riders didn't come close. They circled, distant but deliberate. A message. Elias closed his eyes briefly. They're worried I'll bring trouble. Mary's mouth tightened. They've been worried about me long before you arrived. When the riders finally left, night settled in thick and dark. The wind rattled the windows, and Elias spoke into the quiet. Why do you stay out here? Mary paused by the stove. Because leaving didn't save my husband. Elias absorbed that. I'm sorry. So am I. Later, when Elias slept again, Mary stood at the window, watching the moonlight stretch across the land. She had spent years defending this place from weather, from loneliness, from people who believed they knew what was best for her. Now there was a wounded lawman under her roof, and with him came eyes, expectations, and danger. Yet, for the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel like a fortress. When Elias woke near dawn, he found Mary seated nearby, rifle across her lap, eyes alert, despite the long night. You keep watch, like someone expecting trouble, he said. I keep watch, like someone who's survived it. He nodded. If staying puts you at risk. She cut him off. This land has never been safe. That's never been the point. Elias studied her, understanding dawning slowly. Staying wasn't stubbornness. It was choice. Outside, the wind swept across the ridge. But inside the homestead, something steady took root, an uneasy shelter built on silence, resolve, and 2 souls refusing to run. By the 5th morning, Elias was on his feet. Mary didn't like it. She said nothing at first, only watched from the doorway as he eased himself upright, jaw clenched against the pain he refused to show. Men like Elias Grant measured themselves by motion. Staying still too long felt like surrender. You'll tear the stitches, she said finally. I'll survive, he replied, steadying himself on the table. Seems to be a habit. She handed him a mug of coffee anyway. Don't mistake survival for strength. He gave a faint smile. Noted. The town came calling that afternoon. This time, they didn't stop at the fence. 3 riders, dismounted in the yard, sheriff, Dalrymple among them, hat in hand, but eyes sharp. Mary stepped out onto the porch before they could knock, her presence like a line drawn in dirt. Afternoon, Mary, the sheriff said. Heard you've been keeping company. I don't recall inviting opinions, she replied. Dalrymple glanced past her, spotting Elias through the open door. Marshal Grant, you're expected back in town. Elias moved beside Mary, slower than usual, but upright. I'll return when I'm fit. The sheriff's mouth tightened. Dry Creek isn't the place for unfinished business. Mary folded her arms. Neither is my home. One of the other men shifted uncomfortably. Mary, folks are worried. Trouble follows men like him. Mary's eyes flashed. Trouble follows men everywhere. Funny how it only becomes a concern when it stops at my door. Dalrymple exhaled. There's been talk. This land isolated, hard to reach. If something were to happen, you'd finally get your wish, Mary cut in. An empty house. Silence fell heavy. Elias spoke, then calm but edged with steel. Any danger here is mine. not hers. Mary turned on him. Don't speak for me. Their eyes locked to stubborn, wills refusing to bend. Dalrymple cleared his throat. Marshal, he said, you've got 3 days. After that, this becomes official business. The riders left dust and unease behind them. Inside, Mary slammed the door, harder than necessary. You bring the town's weight with you. I didn't ask for shelter, Elias replied evenly. No, she said. You earned it. That stopped him. That night, Elias told her about Cal Hatcher, the killings, the chase that never quite ended. He doubles back when he thinks he's won, Elias said. If he knows I'm alive, he'll come. Mary stared into the fire. Then he'll have to cross my land. You shouldn't have to face that. She looked at him, then really looked. You think I haven't faced worse? The words weren't angry. They were tired, honest. Later, a shot rang out near the ridge. Not close, not far. A reminder. Elias was moving before the echo faded, grabbing his gun. Mary stood beside him, rifle already in hand. That wasn't town, Elias said. No, Mary agreed. That was a question. They waited until dawn. Nothing else came. But the air felt charged, like a storm holding its breath. In the gray light, Elias spoke quietly. If I leave now, he'll follow the trail I make. If I stay, he comes here, Mary finished. Either way, danger doesn't disappear. He met her gaze. Then you're choosing it. She lifted her chin. I chose this land a long time ago. Everything else just visits. As the sun crept over the ridge, casting light across the homestead, Elias understood something the town never had. Mary Calder wasn't a widow clinging to the past. She was a woman, standing her ground. Anyone who wanted her gone would have to move her themselves. The waiting was worse than the fear. Mary felt it, in the quiet moments when the wind stalled, when the chickens went suddenly still, when Elias paused mid-step like he'd heard something she hadn't. Trouble announced itself in absences long before it showed its face. By the third night after the warning shot, Elias barely slept. Mary found him on the porch before dawn, staring toward the creek bed. His hand rested near his gun, not tense, just ready. He won't come straight in, Elias said, without looking at her. Cal likes to test the ground first. Mary leaned against the post. Men like that always think they own the ending. A single rider appeared just after sunrise. Cal Hatcher didn't rush. He rode slow, deliberate, hands visible, smile sharp as a blade. He stopped short of the fence line and called out, Marshal Grant, he said. Didn't expect you to be hiding behind a woman's skirts. Mary stepped forward before Elias could speak. You're trespassing. Cal's eyes slid to her. Didn't know the land came with teeth. Elias moved beside her. Leave, Cal. Cal laughed softly. You always did, like pretending you had control. The standoff lasted seconds and a lifetime. Cal reached first. The gunfire was sudden, deafening. Wood splintered. Dirt kicked up near the porch. Mary fired once clean true. Elias followed, moving despite the pain tearing through his side. Fell near the fence. Shock written across his face. Silence followed, heavy and final. Elias approached carefully, gun still raised. Cal was alive, barely. He spat blood and laughed weakly. Told you I'd circle back. You did, Elias replied. And you ran out of road. By midday, the sheriff arrived again, this time with fewer words and more caution. Cal was taken away in irons. The body of the threat left behind only questions. Dalrymple studied Mary, as if seeing her for the first time. You handled yourself well. Mary met his gaze. I always do. The sheriff nodded once. This land stays yours. When they were alone again, exhaustion hit hard. Elias sank onto the porch step, pain finally claiming its due. Mary knelt beside him, checking the wound he'd reopened. You're a terrible patient, she muttered. And you're a terrible reason to leave, he replied. She stilled at that. That night, the storm finally broke rain, washing blood from the dirt, thunder rolling like judgment across the ridge. Inside, the house felt smaller, warmer. You'll go back, Mary said quietly. Yes, Elias answered. That's the job. When it ends, he met her eyes. If there's a place that'll have my know where I'd ride. Mary looked toward the hearth, then back at him. Belonging isn't promised. I'm not asking for promises. They sat in silence as the fire burned low, both knowing the hardest part wasn't the gunfight or the town's pressure. It was deciding what came after staying alive. Outside, the ridge stood firm against the storm, just as Mary always had. Spring returned slowly to the ridge. The land softened. First mud, replacing frost. Green pushing through soil that had held firm all winter. Mary worked from dawn to dusk, repairing fences, turning earth, moving through her days with a steadiness that felt earned. The town of Dry Creek no longer sent riders with advice or warnings. After Cal Hatcher, the whispers had finally learned to quiet themselves. Elias Grant stayed longer than he'd planned. The sheriff had insisted he rest before riding out, and Mary didn't argue. She never said she wanted him there, but she didn't tell him to leave either. They settled into a rhythm: shared meals, shared silences. Two people learning how to occupy the same space without needing to claim it. On his last morning, Elias saddled his horse as the sun climbed over the ridge. Mary stood nearby, hands folded, watching him with the same calm she used to watch storms. This isn't goodbye, he said. Mary nodded. No, it's just distance. He hesitated, then reached into his coat and pulled out his badge. I don't know how long the road will keep me, he said, placing it in her hand. But if I don't come back, I want part of me to have stayed. Mary closed her fingers around the star. You'll come back. Elias smiled, softer than she'd ever seen. I believe that. They didn't make vows. They didn't speak of love. Some things didn't need names to be real. Elias mounted and rode out, dust rising briefly before the land swallowed it whole. Mary returned to her house, the door no longer heavy in her hand. The ridge still stood, the wind still moved, and the land was still hers. She had not been chased off. She had not been broken. She had stayed, and sometimes staying was the bravest ending of all. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.